Alex, before we go on the record, just let me know when council is ready in the chambers there, if you could. Jeannie, are you ready? Good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us again tonight, by the way. Alex, did you say something? Can't hear you.
Sorry, we got a lot of mutes on mute here. So council's all ready. And I see our court reporters ready as well. So we're good to go.
Great. Thank you very much.
I was on mute. Nice to see you guys. Sorry.
You too. Thanks for joining
You're
us.
welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go on the record then. This is hearing number 9 for on the conditional use application filed by Churchill Creek Project LLC for the property located at 1310 Beulah Road to redevelop the property as a distribution center. As folks will recall, we left off with a few objectors left to testify, who I believe are all part of Mr. Ferguson's Churchill future group. So that's the plan tonight, is to hear from those individuals. And if there's time left over, we plan on hearing from the borough's tree committee and its chairman, Mr. Ken Balkey. So hopefully we'll get to that. Before we jump into the next objector case, I do want to clarify. I think there were some questions raised when I mentioned the possibility of filing findings of fact or proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law towards the end of the last hearing. And just let me provide some further explanation for that, especially for the non-lawyers who are joining us. And by the way, we have 77 participants total today. I know Mr. Graziani likes me to try to point that out early on, because not everyone can see that information. That includes the presenters as well. So with respect to the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law, what that document is a submission, and it will be due 2 weeks after the end of after the close of the public hearing. And we're not sure, obviously, when this hearing is going to close. But it's an opportunity for the parties, the party objectors, to submit, and it's usually done in numbered paragraph format, proposed findings of fact for council to consider based on the testimony and evidence that's been presented. And also the second portion of it is conclusions of law. In other words, legal arguments similar to what Dr. Sterrett had testified or begun testimony regarding during her case. So it essentially allows for a post-hearing submission. It's got to be based. You can't present any new evidence, but you essentially cite to the evidence of record, and you can make your legal arguments for council's consideration, which they will do, as I had mentioned multiple times, in one or more executive sessions after the close of the hearing. So again, we will, at least as of now, the thought is to give the parties 2 weeks after the close of the hearing in order to submit those. So with that said, Mr. Graziani, do I have any other housekeeping items before we dive into the hearing here?
No, sir.
Okay, I'd ask the court reporter if she could go ahead and swear in all the witnesses, especially those potentially who were not sworn in prior.
So, Mr. Rob, I raised my hand there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
About I'm sure we can have other discussions, and we might have some offline discussions about findings of fact and conclusions of law. I have never attempted to access what appears to be a transcript created by the closed captioning. Is there currently available a transcript, which is essentially a closed captioning transcript?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you that we have asked the court reporter, our stenographer, to begin transcription, the official transcription of the proceedings. And I don't know how far along that process has gone. And I don't know the answer. Mr. Graziani may know the answer to the closed captioning question. So I'll refer to him.
The two go hand in hand. I'm just wondering if, we've all had significantly shorter public hearings in which there wasn't a chance of even having a transcript within 2 weeks after the close of the hearing. So I don't think that's something that we have to iron out now. But perhaps over the next few days and possibly weeks, we could sort of explore what type of a record will be available upon which to base the findings of fact and conclusions of law, and just see what the availability is, near the close of the hearing. I don't think we have to hash it out while all these people are listening to that, and then whatever conclusions we reach about the availability of the transcript can be communicated to everybody who's interested in that.
Yeah, Mr. Ferguson, I'm fine with that. That 2 weeks is not set in stone, and I recognize there's a lot of material that needs to be, reviewed and potentially included and referenced in that, such a document. I'm also sensitive to council's, limited timeline to, consider those proposed findings and try to turn around a decision in a timely manner. So we'll continue to try to balance that. I don't want to overly burden any of the party objectors or the applicant either. So I agree. We'll keep that somewhat fluid at this point and address it at the end of the hearing.
Okay, and just one other thing is that I think Alex was courteous enough to copy me with a letter that was sent in from the GASP organization, and the letter, which it's not part of the record, and I'm not suggesting that it is, but my purpose in raising it is that the letter to Mr. Graziani began by saying something to the effect that, oh, well, I know we're not allowed to talk at this hearing. And I'm wondering if anybody knows why or how that organization or anybody else who may not be a resident of the borough of Churchill might not be participating because they may have been told in advance that there's no possibility of them participating. If anybody knows why the GASP organization reached that conclusion in their letter.
Ms. Ferguson, I don't know the answer. It certainly did not come from me. I'm not sure why a letter was submitted by that organization at this time, or what the purpose was specifically as it relates to this hearing. So no, I can't tell you the answer to that question. I don't believe anyone at the borough made any sort of determinations regarding standing or admissibility or anything like that. Today was the first that I've seen of that document as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, folks who may be making inquiries, that they're not being told that if they're not members of the borough. I mean, there are ways to establish standing. They may or may not have standing, but I wouldn't want them to be told outside of the hearing that they can't participate.
Hopefully you will agree. The borough has been very careful and I think very open and very transparent in seeking and allowing testimony and evidence even beyond that, which may normally be submitted, especially in light of the pandemic, the online or virtual situation we have with the hearing. So I think the borough will continue to have that approach to all testimony that's been presented, and those determinations will not be made outside of a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gavin, you may want to acknowledge one of our past pro se party objectors, Elizabeth Caspin. I know she had a question in a similar fashion, so you might want to allow her to speak.
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Caspin.
Thank you. So the applicant asked for an extension to apply to DEP's letter of technical deficiency dated 7/19/21, and I believe the new deadline will be September 18th.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that date. Sorry.
The first date was July 19th, 2021, and the new deadline is September 18th, 2021. And I would like to reserve the right to examine and respond to DEP's response to the applicant's revision. And if the revision is referenced in this public hearing, to also review that. And I would like to be granted adequate time to review these documents and prepare my comments.
So, Dr. Caspin, I think the permitting process that you're referring to is a process that's occurring outside of the scope of this conditional use hearing. To the extent the applicant submitted studies, evidence, or testimony that's already been subject to cross-examination, has been part of their case in chief, that I think that's already been covered. To the extent that there's additional supplemental information covered, for instance, by way of applicant's rebuttal case, which would occur after the borough engineers portion of this public hearing, then certainly that rebuttal case is subject to cross-examination, and any additional materials submitted in connection therewith, would be subject to your questioning. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I to the extent that the permitting the permitting process, I view that as separate and apart from this conditional use application, and it's based on its own separate criteria. And frankly, when you're talking about third-party permits, you're usually talking more about the land development aspect of the project rather than the conditional use project. So I guess I think that's a to be determined answer to your question. We have to wait and see what else is submitted by the applicant in connection with their application.
The reason I thought it was relevant is because that application constituted the entire water quality analysis, which is part of the conditional use permitting process.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll have to see what that submission is before we can make a final determination on it. That's all I can tell you at this point. That we'll address that as necessary in the future.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. All right, Jeannie, I'm sorry. I think we almost got you swearing people in, and then we went a little bit sideways. But if you could go ahead and do that for us.
Yep. Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you very much. Mr. Metz, Mr. Gallagher, before we turn this over to Mr. Ferguson for his additional objector testimony, do we have any other housekeeping from your perspective?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
With that said, Mr. Ferguson, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, we're going to call Murray Bilby, who I see is a panelist. Mr. Bilby, can you unmute, please?
Trying. Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Mr. Bilby, I have identified a number of documents upon which you wanted to rely. Do you have access to those documents now? Just before you begin, I want to make sure that if you wish to display them, that we'll be able to do that without interruption.
I'm not going to display them necessarily. I will submit them. They are submitted. I will refer to them in here unless you think people should be involved. They're simply supplementing the comments that I wanted to make.
Okay.
I can go through them at the end on a one-by-one to explain their relevance if anyone
That might be an efficient way to go about it. Perhaps at the end, we will ask Mr. Graziani to have them queued up, and then we can display them, and you can then tie them to the testimony that you're rendering. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay, please proceed.
All right. The objective of my statements in this presentation is to lay out why the traffic statistics of the applicant are grossly underestimated. And since the decisions on the related consequences, the noise study, the soot study, the street, the congestion, etc., they're all based on these inaccurate trucking numbers. All the reports and the studies are suspect, and they should not be used in any decisions related to this project until the borough is able to do its own independent analysis. Given the disingenuous data supplied by the applicant and the high probability for significantly more traffic generation than projected, the applicant has not provided what is required for the approval of this project. This project is what Jeff Bezos calls a one-way door. There is no turning back. The consequences are permanent. so that there is a clear understanding of why the Hillwood traffic counts are not accurate. It's vital to understand how this facility actually operates. Only then can the conclusions be appreciated. Documents supporting everything covered can be found on the Churchill Future website, including the books, the videos, the publication articles, the suppliers' contents, the association studies, the nonprofit studies, with thousands of backlinks to original sources. Now, I recommend those with limited time to read the Stone book, which is about Amazon, quite interesting. And if you're business oriented, like I am, the Sharon book on the Amazon management system. A lot of content. Now, I do have more than casual experience with distribution. You will want to know this before I discuss the vehicle counts. I've worked with truckload and LTL shippers since 1983. I've imported containers and break bulk distributed products at the California warehouse since 1998. I have knowledge in transportation stretching back to the mid-70s when I worked for Emory Air Freight. So I know a little something about both trucking and air. I can discuss how a given density on an NMFC class will affect rates on any LTL trucking route for any particular product, as well as where to stack an AAY container for use on a narrow body freighter aircraft, specifically 737s. I am no expert. I just have some experience. There has been absolutely no discussion around actual trucking requirements to support this mega distribution center. So to understand the true requirements, it helps to understand the basic operations of such a facility. This generation of distribution centers is the largest ever constructed anywhere in the world. So the term mega is appropriate. Amazon has different distribution warehouses, each with a different function. The flow of trucks will be different depending upon that function. You can think of it as a series of cascades. The Churchill facility will be the last large warehouse in the cascade of products, prepping for the last mile delivery. Permanent stock will be limited to quick turnover items as determined by Amazon's AI algorithms. At this facility, it will mostly be items boxed and labeled for final delivery from previous warehouses. Thus, it will require more in and out activity than a warehouse whose purpose is mostly stocking products. An example of the cascade is the, you can laugh, pomegranate molasses that I ordered yesterday afternoon and that was delivered at 5 today. It shipped from BDL2, Windsor, Connecticut, to EWR8, Teterboro, New Jersey, to Pit 5, that's the facility off of I-76 and Chartiers, to the United States Postal Service, who did finally delivery to my Penn Hills office in 24 hours. It is that final breakdown for last mile delivery that influences the large number of trucks that are needed. Now, Amazon's unique. Only other big box stores like Walmart and Target come even close to imitating the efficiency of Amazon. I will simplify the procedures of this distribution center as it is really quite complex. This project is mega because the average footprint in North America for a distribution center is 180,000 square feet versus 639,000 square foot footprint with this Hillwood project. Every additional square foot increases exponentially the amount of storage the facility can handle. Add to that a height around 100 feet versus 40 feet, and the mass is much easier to visualize. So this building is the equivalent of 5 single level warehouses, one on top of the other. Consider that the traditional distribution center requires storing, picking, and packaging. The amount of merchandise, that is the throughput, is limited by the number of employees and the amount of automation. The automation at a traditional distribution center is more difficult than simply sorting boxes as at this proposed Churchill facility. At all stages of the logistics, Amazon has perfected the process of integrating robots for a very specific task and AI, artificial intelligence for those not sure of the term, for automated decision making. The goal at Amazon since the beginning is build to scale. The larger, the better, as fixed costs can be averaged over more data points, continually lowering costs. One cannot but admire the ingenuity and the creativity of Amazon in this particular aspect. That's the only way Amazon can come up with 2-day delivery time constraints and still keep those costs reasonable. I mean, it is amazing. Even with Prime, Amazon has a 19% gross margin in shipping. I mean, that is incredible. What we have here in Churchill is not a traditional distribution center. It is a final sort before delivery to the final mile customer delivery. Among all the different fulfillment centers within the Amazon distribution world, this final sort is the most automated of all, and there's several reasons. I mean, in simple terms, everything coming into this mega warehouse will be shipped out for local delivery in Pittsburgh East, either directly from this location or through several local last mile facilities such as North for Sales. Everything in must ship out, and do it within 2-day, 1-day, or 2-hour timelines. And everything shipped out needs new stock shipped in to replace it. I did another order yesterday too, to give you another example. I ordered some sunglasses, and they came in from Cleveland 2 to Pittsburgh 9, a different Pittsburgh location, and then to my office, 24 hours. First, and there are historic ratios used, the number of employees to handle a warehouse of close to 3 million square feet from the association would have been about 1,200 per shift. Amazon has it down to just 500. As a background, the industry ratio is roughly 1 person for every 2,000 square feet. Now, it's also important to consider that there will be in any distribution center a given number of people who are not actual employees. For example, security, both at the entry gates and in monitoring the security cameras. Almost always, these are contract employees. Others who maintain the equipment are usually employees of those manufacturers or specialists in those sophisticated equipment. Finally, most Amazon warehouses hire normal employees through outside companies who do interviewing and training on site, and they will also need their own parking accessibility. The IT department is likely to be Amazon employees because of the confidential nature of the programming, but for many facilities, that's also contracted out. So, where will the majority of these 500 estimated full-time employees be working? A large percentage will be controlling the arrival and the departure of the freight, the jockeys, something that still needs humans to do. The actual jockey job description at Amazon will be posted later, and I'll come back to that. The way trucks are managed on site is a whole different world. Gone are the days when a trucker just showed up and was directed to a loading dock and backed up his own rig. That's long, long gone. Time spent unloading and reloading the actual trailer is separate from how that trailer actually shows up at a given dock. To give some examples, we first must understand time is money. 2 men may take 2 hours to unload a traditional loose pack trailer. Adding more men to the job will speed it up, but when you exceed 5, the productivity decreases with so many workers going in and out of the trailer. They simply get in each other's way. To truly appreciate how much stock can be placed inside a standard 53-foot trailer. Folks, don't walk it out. Go inside, go all the way to the nose. You will be impressed. Another area that Amazon is perfecting is the ability to quickly load and unload trailers. It's adapting different methods for different products with different constraints. So without going into too much detail, one way to containerize it's just like airplanes, where containers, the pallets, they're all preloaded somewhere and then pushed in the trailer in minutes, and then you do the reverse with when you're emptying it. Now, I've got photos, to be part of the exhibits or photos of how it's done. Amazon thinks big picture, not just that loading point. It considers the unloading at destination when configuring the loading method, as well as the next step in the fulfillment sequence. This is sophisticated. This is complex logistics planning. One's tempted to think of just how to load and how fast to load it, and that's wrong. No. Loading a trailer is just one step in that total logistics system. Why that's important for you to realize will be evident in a few minutes. Every activity is related to what took place earlier and what will take place subsequently. This applies to every single moment that both the trailer is handled and that the merchandise is handled. So far, we're talking about a trailer at the dock with the doors open. Now we must think about all the individual things that made this happen. And I was going to give another example. All right, at Amazon, a driver not from a previous Amazon facility must alert the destination 24 hours in advance of its arrival at the destination. En route, all kinds of things happen to slow down the movement. You got construction delays, you've got mechanical problems. You got the driver just running out of hours. The AI that Amazon uses takes all these things and a whole lot more into consideration by analyzing every single route in the United States and applying that data to its own estimates for arrival time. That data allows the receiving facility to estimate with amazing accuracy when that truck will arrive. The driver calling in, for the most part, just confirms what the algorithm predicts, and it allows for minor adjustments. The question you may have is, why? Every minute of every activity within an Amazon facility is measured. That includes the loading docks. Each is kept productive through the AI programming so that there is no downtime. Every trailer is assigned a specific time to be loaded and a specific time to be unloaded 24 hours a day. Semi-trucks arriving at the Churchill facility will almost all be from other Amazon facilities, and the time and travel already calculated and conveyed to destination. This is similar to airplanes, with specific arrival times and gates calculated before the plane even takes off. Because this facility will be primarily for small package sortable, that's one of their descriptions of warehouses. Drivers of the semi-trucks will be coming mostly from other Amazon distribution centers, not more than 8 hours away. That's why even the shiny new cabs that Amazon leases to these independent drivers, they have no sleepers because they're not long-haul trucks. Now, this is critical because every minute wasted at the loading dock and unloading of the trailer is costly. Delays cause ripple effects and additional costs all along the line. For example, a specific item on that truck can be pre-scheduled to ship 1 hour after arrival. If it's late, then a commitment to the customer will be late. Amazon is fanatical about its delivery commitments. Now, we come back to the need for absolute efficiency at the dock. That efficiency is complex and highly controlled. When every driver arrives at the facility entry gate at the time estimated and with the window of his allotted entry time slot, he's then given a location to go and drop the trailer. Why? Not being familiar with the facility, he will waste time looking for and backing in, which would have been the norm 10 years ago. He goes instead to a specific location, easy to reach, and it's easy for him to drop his trailer. When you look at any given Amazon facility, from the ground or from Google Maps, there are hundreds of trailers parked on the perimeter all the time. Some empty, some full, some to be loaded, some to be shipped out. This is necessary because the docks operate nonstop, and those trailers are the buffer for that to work efficiently. Now, this may seem inefficient. Drop his trailer. It is not. What the semi-cab does, then we're going to discuss later. But since every truck entering is doing the same thing, we got to wonder, how does this detached trailer get itself to the dock? What we have here are those jockeys. These are drivers, increasingly with specialized towing vehicles, who are experts in reattaching the drop trailers and putting them into the loading dock position that the AI assigns to that specific trailer. As a side note, the jockey trucks used are considered off-road vehicles and do not have the same high pollution controls of regular trucks for diesel emissions. And remember, they're operating 24 hours a day. They were not considered in any of the Hillwood studies. Although electric versions are being developed, they're not yet commercially available. Now, the exhibit V3 shows two manufacturers, two most popular ones, of those particular trucks. It also includes the Amazon job description. Check it out. It's really quite interesting. And that assignment can vary, just as an aircraft can be assigned a gate and then need to come to an alternative due to some unforeseen situation. You know, the previous plane hasn't left. If you fly a lot, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Let's take a minute and think about how and the why the 49 docks are arranged as they are at this proposed facility. Remember, this facility is not unique. It was specifically designed for final sort, meaning that the primary interior functions are tied directly to the products coming in and going out to minimize the handling and for maximum efficiency. An example, if a specific pallet of products is scheduled to leave out of Dock 21 for North First sales, they're already prepackaged from another facility, it would not be unloaded at Dock 49. It would be closer to Dock 41. This advanced scheduling is incredibly complex with massive data requirements. And the results are beautiful from a logistics-oriented person. Only Amazon has so far been able to master this process, although one report shows that Walmart is pretty close behind. Now, back to the trailers in a parking stall. That jockey will quick attach and pull the trailer to its assigned location. And his little computer there is telling him where it goes. It's all already identified. All right, it's got to be chalked. That's an OSHA regulation, you know, when it's rolling away. Doors got to be open and the dock level has got to be lowered. Because Amazon operates every single minute, 24 hours a day, Amazon rarely closes the dock doors like most distribution centers. Although things do happen, they are fully capable of a total lockdown in seconds. Full control. Now these jockeys, they're running to and from continually during their shifts. Time on task you've done anything on reading about Amazon, you know, time on task applies here just as it does inside the facility for people who are boxing items. Now, let's talk about the facility itself and why Amazon's able to operate at such high efficiency with increasingly fewer employees. This is a final sort. That means the majority of stock coming in is already boxed with labels. These are small boxes, functioning similar to how UPS originally operated with belts and paddle arms. The goal is to quickly assemble shipments into final delivery zones. A zone is defined as what will fit into a flex driver's vehicle. Let's diverge for a moment. Think about how that box got to your front door. First, let's talk about delivery zones. Travel time is lost time. Amazon has broken the entire country into continually changing zones based on the volume of packages that they need to be delivered. This is an incredibly complex algorithm taking into consideration minute by minute traffic flows, population densities, weathers, even the storage space on the flex drivers. Actually, it's several thousand details, at least according to the reports I read. And the only way they can do it is through AWS, the Amazon Web Services. That's their computer farm, which collects and interprets all that data. As delivery zones are constantly being updated, it influences the entire distribution system from what was ordered all the way to the facility plan for Churchill. Now back to the building. Most packages are grouped by zone for redistribution to the final mile location. Understanding how all of this data is interrelated will help explain the traffic volumes. You ever wonder how that package showed up at your step at midnight? First, we must understand Amazon never shuts down, never. There will be inevitable bottlenecks, but the Amazon culture is not to just deal with it. Every delay is studied and plans made to avoid repetition, but delays do occur. The final delivery is critical. That is the customer delight that Jeff Bezos constantly emphasizes. To make this happen 7 days a week, when the traditional delivery services worked a 5-day week, Amazon pressured its outside delivery carriers to change. Amazon first required the U.S. Postal Service to add Saturday and Sunday delivery to their contracts, and then forced both UPS and FedEx to do the same. That has rippled throughout the industry, and now all third-party logistics companies and the carriers have had to adapt to remain competitive. Amazon took the cue, but moved it so much further from Uber. It now has flex drivers who bid on delivery zones as independent contractors. They bid through an app on their phone. That app tells them what to deliver, where to deliver it. It controls their time on task so that Amazon can give the customer truly amazing accuracy on delivery. You get those email messages now, often with a photo showing it as delivered. Think about that. It is amazing. But you must also understand the behind-the-scenes logistics that make it happen. Now, Amazon has some of its own workers making deliveries, but increasingly, they are the flex drivers who are not on Amazon payroll. Amazon owns some trucks with logos. What increasingly finances the purchase or the lease of those vehicles to those flex drivers so that they maintain their independence but still carry the Amazon name. Those drivers are often part-time and work odd times while holding down other jobs. All this works really fast. The aim at Amazon is 2-hour delivery. It already provides 2-day for just about everything. When you think through the various levels of the logistics system, it seems like an impossible task. And in areas without high population density, it usually is. But when you think about also how Amazon groups those diverse distribution centers, it becomes possible. An item can be pulled and packaged in 10 minutes from a Findlay area stocking warehouse. It can be delivered to Churchill in less than an hour. It can be unloaded and sent to North Versailles in 30 minutes, and then delivered back to a Braddock residence in 15 minutes. It's your 2 hours. The more final delivery stations Amazon can set up in East Pittsburgh, the more efficient this becomes. To further support this service, the AI will predict which items customers in the east of Pittsburgh will be ordering. So you will see actual storage of selected products in the proposed Churchill facility as well. I mean, they only need the 40-foot high first level and part of the second level for the final sorts. And Amazon frequently has different roles within the same distribution center. So that's not new. It's just being raised to a higher level in this supersized building. As we've stated before, the exact blueprint is the latest generation designed by Amazon and is being repeated at 12 identified constructions around the country, at least we found, in the last year. It comes in 2 sizes. It comes in the 640 and the 840, plus or minus about 20 feet, with a few variations. An Amazon spokesman is quoted in the local Pittsburgh Business Magazine as confirming the account is actually 20 of these mega facilities in the process right now. Our exhibits give an example of specific locations of both the larger and the smaller. The outline of the building on the Hillwood PowerPoints is not that of the actual building to be constructed in Churchill. It is a placeholder design that is used on all presentations. So we have not been provided with any renderings of the actual building and the applicant intends to construct. For example, you can see this in the Alcoa exhibit, Alcoa, Tennessee, R1. Also a Hillwood project. We cannot underestimate the genius of this design facility. The massive size is, of course, why Amazon and Hillwood continue to obfuscate all of these details. But much can be gleaned from these other facilities, just like it, which have already opened, or where more details were provided to those industrial park operators. Even now, some residents in Churchill still imagine this something like the Findlay facility. This one is so much larger. For example, Exhibit R, which has much more detail than what Hillwood has provided to Churchill, such as the full dimensions on all 4 sides of the buildings. There's also, that's the Hillwood project, same design as they presented here. Plus, it is in a dedicated industrial park, not an established residential community. Reminder, this is the same building Hillwood proposes to build in Churchill. They know, we don't. Hillwood knows their project does not belong at this location, so it intentionally avoids any details relating to its actual size. If you want to see what an actual height will look at Exhibit V4 before the facade is added. It will scare you. Now let's put into perspective the trucks bringing stock into this proposed mega facility. Amazon owns the trailers with its logo and directly or indirectly owns those without. Amazon has many subsidiaries and exclusive contracts. That means it controls the trailers at every step of the logistics system. It does not control those warehouse to warehouse semi-drivers who bid on a delivery, just like the flex drivers. And they're like Uber drivers. That's just what they are. They're independent contractors. Amazon simply assigns them a trailer to deliver from A to B. In fact, Amazon's now doing for the big rig truck drivers what it started doing for the flex drivers. It's loaning them money to go buy the rigs themselves, and then tying that loan into a requirement to only drive for Amazon. There's a shortage of drivers right now, if you're not aware of it. And recently they purchased a whole fleet of rigs that they're leasing to those drivers with the Amazon logo. Now, those drivers have deadlines to meet, meaning you aren't going to see them at the turnpike rest stops. A to B, they got to go. Now, all the rigs coming into the Churchill facility will arrive and drop the trailer with very few exceptions. They will either be immediately given another trailer to carry out, or they leave the property and return when the app tells them it's time to do so. After dropping the load in, they can decline a new load out and drive the rig home. You can do that. Or they can go somewhere and wait till the app calls, say, come back and collect something. Think about folks at the airport waiting for passengers. If you can't wait at the arrivals curve, you go to a spot, anywhere you can. In industrial zones, trucks can go to the local truck stop for a coffee or park around the area. Since few industrial parks, especially at night, have 24 operations like Amazon, and off hours, you will always see them parked at the entrances to those closed facilities or just on the side of the roads, which are purpose-built wide for semi-trucks. Neither option exists in Churchill, nor are there any truck stops within the area. The property could have a corral or a waiting zone for waiting on the property. However, the submitted drawings do not account for such a staging area in the property. It could be added, but with every square foot already allocated for a task, what must be eliminated? The Planning Commission slightly addressed this, but it's so small that it is nothing more than a token gesture. Remember two things: the size of the facility and the requirement for 2-hour, 2-day delivery. Now we get to the real concerns for Churchill. The loading and unloading times of these trailers and procedures vary with the type of distribution warehouse. Amazon knows, based on historic data and projections, that some products will take longer to load and unload than others. The idea is to maximize the space within the trailer, as every single cubic foot is valuable. Trailers have weight limits, but the products Amazon sells never reach it, like the coils of sheet steel. Documents indicate the goal within Amazon is 20 minutes per trailer to load and to unload. Now that gives 5 minutes to park, open up, and 5 minutes to close, pull away. Workers are timed to meet these requirements. What we learned is that this supposedly applies to both loose stack and containers and pallets. It's easy with containers. As this kind of information is usually not shared with the public, we cannot fully verify it as accurate, as it's based on interviews with Amazon employees, but it is logical when one considers a goal of 2 trucks per hour per loading dock. It may be wrong, and it may be correct for the Churchill facility. In any case, it illustrates each loading dock turnover is no less than 24 trailers in a 24-hour period. That's 1 trailer each hour. Why is this important to know will be discussed later, but it is important to know. We must understand the huge amount of storage space a building of this size can contain. Remember, national average for a distribution center is 180,000 versus the 639,000 square foot foundation the applicant wants to see in Churchill. Almost 3 million square feet of floor space requires a lot of trucks to fill that much space, space equivalent to the entire Monroeville Mall, less just the theater. Amazon standard is already 2-day delivery with Prime. It's well on its way to 1-day delivery. The stated goal for many products is to have a 2-hour delivery. Think about that. If 2-hour delivery for say 20% of the products, that means 20% comes in and goes out essentially immediately, if it's not already on hand. Every item that goes out needs an item to come in, all within that 2-hour time frame. Try to imagine how many vehicles will be required for that rapid turnover. We also see some consolidation packaging on site, meaning some products, all known and predicted by the AWS data, will come in loose and be combined in a single box for final delivery. Requires more time than just rerouting a sealed box, but it too must meet Amazon quick turnover requirements. Think about the whole program. If a single box comes in from LPRZ, Maple Heights, Ohio, shipped through CLE2, fulfillment center near Bedford, Ohio, it will have already lost a day in transit. Therefore, Amazon has just 24 hours for final delivery to the customer and still make the current 2-day delivery obligation. A little trivia. There's a website called Waze.com, and it's got a sub-program that will calculate travel time specifically for Amazon drivers from one center to the next. You can see the drivers' complaints about drop loads and all kinds of stuff, which Liz Castman illustrated in her presentation. You can also go to it to get for cars. So it's just called waze.com. So how will Amazon in Churchill handle a 2-hour delivery requirement that it committed to in 2019? What has this to do with the Churchill facility? It simply means that this distribution center will be emptying and refilling almost 3 million square feet of floor space of products every 24 hours. In simple terms, the number of trucks given by Hillwood cannot support the facility. And repeating those numbers is a complete distortion of reality. In the October 30th, 2020 memorandum to Borough Council, Gateway engineers estimated, based on Hillwood data, not reality data, that there would be 4,054 daily trips generated. That's 168 trips per hour, 24 hours a day. That apparently includes employees, but the data below only concerns truck traffic. You'll need to add the other traffic, including the vendors and the employees on top of those numbers that I'm going to discuss. How do we know how many trucks are needed to supply this facility? Let's look at some basics. This is an Amazon designed facility. Hillwood's just building it. It's got 49 docks. Every single motion at Amazon is tracked and measured for increased efficiency. They are confident it will handle the initial basic requirements of an almost 3 million square foot of floor space. Unless, of course, they intend to add additional buildings on the property after this one is built. Personally, I don't think so, although they have added more parking after initial construction in a lot of locations. Without going into the density and the average package by weight and size, we can do some rough estimations to calculate the number of trucks that will utilize the site. One way to look at this is to assume every truck in leaves with a full load, which we know is not true because they must take those empty trailers back to be refilled again. So the stock out will involve different trucks, hence double the numbers. If we use one trailer unloaded per hour instead of the 2, that gives us 49 docks times 24 hours, or 1,176 semi-trucks, 18-wheelers, coming into the property in a given 24 hours. Then those trucks will need to exit the property, so add another 1,176 movements. We simply, by assuming that these cabs drop a full trailer and pick up an empty one with that single entry and exit, which in reality does not actually happen, as the most cabs have to leave the property and are going to be called back through the app to collect an empty trailer. All right, 1,176 trucks in, then 1,176 trucks gives us 2,352 semi-truck movements, not 600 or 700 in the Hillwood presentation. Entering and exiting the property on local roads. Almost 4 times what Hillwood claims. Even if you say there are inefficiencies, 33%, not likely with Amazon, but to be generous, you're still going to have an absolute minimum of 1,500 big rigs coming and going every 24 hours. Which is more than 60 transits per hour, one every single minute of a 24-hour day. Think about that. One truck every minute, 24 hours a day. One truck every minute. This conservative number is far more than the 600 or so Hillwood projects. That's why we call these numbers misrepresentations. At the planning meeting, the Amazon representative stated, with a map, that they will not be using semi-trucks down Beulah Road south to north for sales. He totally ignored the route north on Beulah Road towards Lawrenceville, which has no room whatsoever to widen and is already encumbered at certain times of the day by semi-trucks. Everyone in Churchill has encountered them at various stages, especially at Beulah and William Penn. What are the alternatives to supply Lawrenceville and the remaining eastern Pittsburgh locations when they come online? And they will. As to the southern route, the reason given is that the restrictions through Turtle Creek do not allow a semi-18-wheeler. Anyone with even slight knowledge about Amazon can see that the circuitous route given would never be tolerated by Amazon. The solution is actually quite simple. You use a Class 6 box truck. That's what every other trucker uses in urban environments, both pickup and delivery. XPO, YRC, FedEx, Estes, Saia, Old Dominion. 18-wheelers are Class 9 and 10 due to their weight and their negative impact to roads. You do not use them in urban environments unless you have to. The Amazon spokesman also neglected to state that the independent contractors, the drivers, using GPS with specific delivery deadlines are not under the control of Amazon. They will go where they want to make that delivery. Let that soak in a little bit. The elephant in the room is still Beulah Road north to Lawrenceville and the other final mile locations, and we still don't even know about. We already have serious delays on Frankstown Road and down to Allegheny Boulevard. Adding several hundred more semis and several hundred Class 6 box trucks, it's going to make it a nightmare. The few semi-trucks that currently use Beulah to go north already create disproportionate problems on the road, beginning with taking the turn north on Beulah, coming from the east on the Parkway. That first right, they come 4 feet into the left turn lane off of Beulah. Going left is even worse. It's an acute angle, more than 90 degrees. Few semis currently use it, thank goodness. But when they do, it is dangerous. They cannot make that turn without pulling into the second lane. Now imagine one at every sequence of light changes going south under the Parkway to get into the property. And then in less than 120 feet, it's got to go off to that right lane in order to merge to get in to the entry. Like so much of this applicant's assumptions, Churchill Borough simply does not have the infrastructure to support any distribution center, and especially not one like this mega center. There's no room to widen the roads without eminent domain taking property from the old golf course and homes up to the top of the hill at Frankstown, or taking property south along Beulah to Turtle Creek. Nor do we address the increased flooding by paving over the watershed. Others have detailed those risks, but they will affect traffic after it leaves the property in these flood-prone locations. About half the size of a semi and half the driving time by the statement by the Amazon rep to go through Monroeville, we can calculate that for every semi bringing freight into the facility, there will be 2 Class 6 trucks or a full semi to some locations. It will go. So the 1,176 outbound semi trucks becomes an additional 2,300 urban box trucks. Simply adding 1,176 and 2,352. We're over 3,500 trucks using local roads every day, including 3 a.m. Divide that by 24 hours and see for yourself how many trucks you will hear between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. while you're trying to sleep. Now let's talk about the other vehicles. There have been discussions about the number of parking spaces in a proposal and a reduction to that count. That's a distraction, tweaking around the edge. It's not relevant. I mean, some comments indicated some kind of victory. It is useless. The number of employees, parking stalls did not come out of nowhere. They are what Amazon expects will be needed. Using 500 employees per shift as a benchmark does not account for the non-Amazon employees, such as security, who will be coming in daily to property, nor does it account for the EMS or fire or police or other contractors who will inevitably be called to the property. Nor does it account for the twice yearly part-time employee expansion. Potential workers are interviewed and trained by independent employment companies on site to work at each given facility. Most workers are not on the Amazon payroll, but that of the private employers and on contract to work at Amazon. With close to 100% annual employee turnover, this is going to be a continual process on site with an unknown number of employee company employees and a long list of potential workers interviewing, coming and going every day. Keep in mind, the 6 weeks of Christmas and the 2 weeks in July means the total number of workers on site will double. Yes, it will double. If there are no spaces for the temp workers to park in peak season, where will they go? Just like those waiting trucks, they will find a spot in the neighborhood to park. Ask yourself, how many spots in Churchill can you locate right now that are suitable for these truck cabs and employees to be parking in, or can accommodate even a line of vehicles? In addition to the trucks, as they overlap, at least 1,000 parking spaces will be used all the time. Not the 500 as some claim, 1,000, because each new shift must arrive before the old shift punches out, and they need open parking stalls. Somewhere near 500 worker vehicles in and 500 out at each shift change. Add that to the number of trucks, and we're facing an inevitable and unsolvable traffic problem in delays, accidents, and maintenance costs. If this had been a typical distribution center of almost 3 million square feet, first it would have been one level. It would have required 3,000 parking stalls. Because this facility is so automated, accommodating trucks is so much more important than accommodating some individual SUV or pickup. This is Amazon with 2 massive surges in July and the holidays where employee counts doubled. for a combined 8-week period, roughly 2 months of the year. That means each shift change needs 1,000 times 2. The only way we can get this accomplished on site is to add more parking. And we've already diminished almost all of the green space that actually absorbed water. You could build multi-level garages, right? They're going to come back for that. Or those vehicles are going to be parking in the community. They got to park somewhere. The entrances and exits, another problem, will simply not be capable of handling the dramatic increase in traffic. There are so many bad assumptions for the interchanges on Beulah and Greensburg Pike. It would take another 15 pages of single type text to point them all out. If restriping and coordinating lights could alleviate previous rush hour jams, it would have been done a long time ago. And the amount of lane widening space at the pinch points, it's almost zero. How do you widen Beulah under the parkway? So those who have accepted the numbers from Hillwood, they're ignoring the reality of this facility, not accounting for the actual increase in traffic leads to a more significant delusion. All the analyses, the traffic studies, the sound studies, the light studies, the soot, the air quality studies, the noise studies, all are based on Hillwood traffic numbers that are at a minimum 1/3 of what will take place. Each of these studies is based on false premises. They should all be thrown out and the borough, not Hillwood, collect real data. The fact that all these studies are based on selected averages and not the extremes, such as the recent Saturday downpour, also makes these studies misleading. Extreme weather is the new normal. You got the floods in Germany and the heat in Portland. It is false to compare out-of-date historic averages to today's reality with its increasing extremes and say that Hillwood studies for this project meet the requirements. They do not. Others will go into this in more detail, and we have lots of details. One area overlooked is that 60% of the traffic exiting Greensburg Pike will be uphill, low gear, idling uphill at the light to exit. That was not considered in the pollution study or the noise study, which relied on trucks, noise, and pollution averages on flat surfaces. Consequently, both those requirements fail the criteria for approval. Now, let's come to a conclusion. It's tough to make good decisions. Really. How does one crystallize his principles to make that right decision, especially in ones like this, where there are unknown risks and questionable data to substantiate those decisions? Residents have spent thousands and thousands of hours generating a solid case for the borough of Churchill to reject the applicant's proposal. Dr. Kasman's documentation, which we added to the Churchill Future site, has 35 pages of precise, documented reasons to vote no. Read it, footnotes and all. Knowledge will be greatly expanded. Throughout this whole process, Hillwood has behaved in a duplicitous manner. The statements and the PowerPoints are full of false comparisons, exaggerations, misleading graphics, distortions, omissions, distracting comments and details. There is a reason Jeff Bezos forbids PowerPoints in Amazon. It gives the presenter too much wiggle room to hide and distort the big picture. So, just how credible is Hillwood as a developer? Example. Most people are not aware that the original proposal up to August the 3rd, 2020, was for a 640,000 square foot facility. And then it jumped to 840 and then back down to 639 in January, supposedly as a concession. You can look at the workshop presentation on the Churchill Borough. It's all there. I've also added it as an exhibit V1. As an example of a 5-level 840, the same as Hillwood proposed in November, can be seen at the Lodges Center at I-95 in Wilmington, Delaware. The Delaware Business Times described it as needed for Amazon to assure its goal of one-day delivery. The proposed building outline is exactly the same as Hillwood used, although that developer is Dermody Properties, not Hillwood as the Alcoa, Tennessee location. Promises were made to fix omissions and faulty data later on every single one of those studies. For clarity, there are deficiencies on every single study submitted by Hillwood. Hillwood cannot be trusted to fulfill any such promises based on the overwhelming false data already submitted. Remember, those distortions are deliberate, not accidental. This company does these developments for a living, so those distortions had to have been deliberate. We cannot trust Hillwood. Hillwood is not credible. Some say, what about the rights of the landowner? He purchased it as a C1 zoning, so he can and should develop it as a C1 property, not a C3 or M1 leading to destruction of our residential community. This project is not consistent with the comprehensive plan of Churchill Borough, nor is it consistent with past developments of Churchill Borough or the current character of Churchill Borough. That alone is reason to vote no. Voting against the Hillwood proposal will assure that the whole borough is united. A united borough is the best defense should Hillwood decide not to accept the no vote. It should be clear to all that the majority of residents oppose this project. It should be clear we all support site development with businesses that complement the community, not destroy it. Apparently, Hillwood and Amazon, mostly Hillwood, underestimated the level of professional and intellectual capacity of the residents and their ability to see through misleading and distorted justification for their project. Not only does Churchill have professional academics in the fields related to this project, it also has the financial ability to resist this project far beyond the application phase. Hopefully, Hillwood will accept the no vote and move on to their plan B. If not, rest assured, the residents will not cease their involvement and resistance to Hillwood and this Amazon distribution center. The discovery phase in every legal case always uncovers something interesting. Each council member will relate differently to each of the concerns residents are brought up in these meetings, or in something we may have referenced, but together, we all will need to say no and defend the community against this destruction. This massive distribution center is the wrong business for this location. The risks are too high and the damage is too low. Given the disingenuous data supplied by the applicant and the probability for significantly more traffic generation than projected, the applicant has not provided what is required for the approval of this project, we ask the council to vote no on the current Hillwood proposal, as it is detrimental to the safety and to the welfare of Churchill Borough. Murray Bilby, 2424 Churchill Road. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Bilby. Mr. Ferguson, any other questions for Mr. Bilby before we move across?
I don't have any other questions. Mr. Bilby, throughout his presentation, made specific references. Well, first of all, he referenced the Churchill Future website and materials that are posted there. That we're not offering a website or materials that are posted there to be incorporated in the record. However, he did make specific reference to exhibits which we have previously marked for purposes of this hearing. And with Alex's assistance, perhaps we could call those up and just allow Mr. Bilby to identify the exhibit and concisely state the purpose for which he was referring to it in his testimony. Is that all right with you, Mr. Bilby and Alex?
Sure, I'm available to any questions if anyone has.
Well, I didn't ask if you were available for questions. What I'm asking you to do is to identify these exhibits.
Oh, it's distorted. It's only partial.
Well,
Yeah, so just give me a minute. These are made available. They've been made available online.
right.
And they're labeled as provided to me today. Obviously, this one is a one of one image. It's referred to as Exhibit V-1 Bilby. Original 640 square foot, PDF. So I guess this was in reference to.
So let me just help out here. Alex, would you kindly just rotate that exhibit? I noticed earlier as I looked at the exhibits that they're rotated in a number of different directions. So we'll just start with this one.
Let me just give me a minute to keep
That's
rotating.
okay. You're doing
Apologize.
great.
More, I think.
There we go. Okay. And Alex, I believe that there's more than one page to this exhibit. Isn't that right?
It's true that the other exhibits provided by Mr. Bilby or Mr. Murray Bilby have other pages. This one does not. It just
Okay,
has-
this one does not. Mr. Bilby, what does this exhibit illustrate to which you referred in your testimony? Just very briefly, please.
This indicates that the original proposal by Hillwood was for 640,000 square feet, which was a ground level plus 4.5 levels. This is part of the PowerPoint presentation to the August 3rd workshop.
Okay, let's go to the exhibit marked E2. And let's just give Alex a moment to reduce and rotate this, please. Okay, now this is an exhibit that contains a number of images. Could you tell us about the first image, which I can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the first image you've marked as A?
All right, this is a picture of the double stacking, which allows Amazon to put twice the industry average of merchandise into a given warehouse because they use their Kiva robots to move these panels. It is something nobody else can do at this point except Amazon. It gives them the competitive advantage.
Thank you, Alex. Would you scroll to B of exhibit B2? And
all right.
Go ahead.
Now, here is an example of how they will use an upper level in order to supplement the ground level. This is how I'm guessing, I don't have access to it, but this is how I am projecting similar interior construction of the building that Hillwood proposes.
Okay. Is there a third exhibit there? Yes. All right. This is three different. It also has A on it, but it's the third picture in exhibit B2.
Yeah, these are 3 photos showing how Amazon achieves a 20-minute delivery or loading and unloading of a trailer. In this particular case, this was part of a video, which is available. If anyone wants it, I can supply all that stuff. All right, and then A, then to B, and then to C. And you can see the comparison of the size of these pallets to the individuals. They just slide them in like airlines, freighters do as containers in order to maximize density. This is very rapid process.
Okay, what was the source of the images that are in Exhibit V2?
Oh, off the top of my head, I don't know. I have looked through hundreds of these. I got videos galore. I have another document which I can supply later, which has the links to all these.
Okay, perhaps.
Plus a bunch that were never used.
Okay, we may be able to just supply those to be made part of the record so we can identify the source from which you procured this information. For now, let's go to Exhibit V3. Alex, if you will, please. Okay, thank you.
All right, this is a cut and paste, which shows 3 manufacturers. First, it's a manufacturer. What does a jockey truck look like? This is an example of how the trailers are moved from the drop zone to the loading dock and then back to the drop zone for the semi trucks to reattach. I also attached, this is from Amazon, their job description of what a yard jockey does, because they are constantly hiring individuals for this.
What was the source of this information, Mr. Bilby?
This was a posted job offering online from Amazon.
Okay, Alex.
Through a private company. This was a private company offering a job to work through them at the Amazon facility, because it's not an actual Amazon employee, but it is an Amazon job description.
Okay, would you scroll down on that a little bit more, Alex, please? I was looking to see if there was something beyond the job description in this exhibit. I seem to recall, but
there is another manufacturer, very prevalent manufacturer of a truck. It was just a cut and paste. You can tell by the brands. It's kind of like Fords and Chevys.
Okay. Okay, I think that was the bottom.
And then the final one is from the state of California, just describing how these are off-road diesel vehicles that are not subject, because they're not on public roads, they're not subject to the normal highway controls. They're like a dirt bike riding through the woods.
In the state of California, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that is in the state of California.
All right.
But I suspect, I haven't verified it, but California is usually stricter than most other states. And this was just a photo showing of what it looks like moving a trailer around the site.
Okay, let's go to Exhibit V4. Thank you. All right, let's just take a moment to orient this exhibit. Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Bilby, can you tell us where this came from and what you're using it to illustrate?
This is from Juliet, Tennessee. This is the same general layout, final distribution center from the local business shot pictures from this. Some of these are also Google pictures, but that's what the building looked like before the facade was put on.
Okay, and I think we can scroll down a little bit more. There's another image bearing a resemblance to the example that we were shown earlier.
And that's what, and that was the same design as Joliet in Tennessee, but that one is Pflugerville, Texas, just to show that there are 2 facilities very similar. Same layout.
Okay, let's see if there's anything else within this exhibit? So we scroll down. Okay.
Yes, okay, so here is another one. Can't remember what the source on this one was, but this was another facility. Oh, this is the Demoti product. This is the one that we saw in the first picture. This is the layout, and you'll see some similarities between that and the Churchill proposal.
Okay. And do you remember the source of this information?
Delaware Business Times.
Okay.
And on this particular case, I brought to the attention that it showed the actual square footage of the building and the square footage at each of the levels of the building, including the roof,
Okay.
instead of just a single block number.
All right. So now earlier, before we let you go, Mr. Bilby, okay. We have other exhibits that you previously presented, but I don't think you referred to them. One is called Hillwood Original Stormwater PDF.
I eliminated 2/3 of my presentation, and that would have applied to the original version.
Oh, okay, I'm just checking. And there is an exhibit which is called R, and that says Pearl, Alcoa, Tennessee.
That one I referred to here. That
Okay, you
is,
duplicated that?
yes, that's the one I referenced today in Alcoa, Tennessee, which is a mirror image of what Hillwood proposes here.
Okay, thank you. Then it seems, thank you, Alex. It seems that we've been able to identify the exhibits that were relied upon by Mr. Bilby, and I don't have any other questions for Mr. Bilby.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. We will now turn it over for cross-examination, and we'll start with Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Metz, do you have any questions for Mr. Bilby?
Just a few. Mr. Bilby, are you a professional traffic operations engineer?
No, Mr. Gallagher.
Okay. Are you a professional engineer?
No, Mr. Gallagher.
Okay. And have you ever worked for or been employed by Amazon?
No, Mr. Gallagher.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Alex, while we ask any other party objectors to raise their hands to be acknowledged if they have questions, can we ask any council members if they have questions for Mr. Bilby?
Yes.
Anyone in the room there, Alex?
I don't see anyone in the room who has questions.
Okay, anyone else online? Any council members online? Okay, Alex, any hands raised from the party objectors?
I do not see any at this point. I do know we have one person, we have two individuals on the phone, and one of them is going to, I guess, be coming in after Kate speaks. Was one of Dwight's individuals. I don't know if that person would like to speak, and I believe April is online as well. I'll allow her to speak in case she has a question.
So after Mr. Bilby, we have Kate Carrigan Hill, and then Nicole Phillips will be speaking by telephone, and I emailed her phone number to I think to Alex and to opposing counsel so that we would know which phone number was associated with Ms. Phillips.
Okay, great. Let's bring Ms. Carrigan Hill up then, since I think she was next in line.
April, do you have any questions? Sorry, Gavin.
Excuse me, this is Gerald Moore.
Hi, Mr.
Hello?
Moore. Hi, Mr. Moore. We can hear you.
Okay, I'm at 2700 Chapel Hill Drive.
That's not one of
I
the-
would like to know,
Mr. Moore, are you a party objector in this case, or are you, and I know, I think you've been muted now, but are you planning on participating by way of public comment later on? Alex, are you able to unmute Mr. Moore just so we can be clear for the record as to what his role is?
He's been offered to unmute. Yeah, he's unmuted.
Okay,
thank
Mr.
you.
Moore, just,
I would like to know how we can get more of Mr. Bilby's information to the general homeowners of Churchill. This is valuable contrary information against Hillwood and Amazon that needs to be given the light of day, which hasn't been fully submitted as Mr. Bilby has done.
Mr. Moore, there will be a time during a public comment portion of this hearing for you to provide any testimony that you would like to have. I think Mr. Bilby made clear that he has a website available to those members of the public who may be interested to check out churchillfuture.com. And again, that's not part of the record, but that's a reference for those who are interested. So thank you, Mr. Moore. Alex, did we hear anything from Ms. Klein? Okay, great. Why don't we move on to Ms. Carrigan Hill? We'll keep things rolling. We will plan a break at 10 o'clock for our closed captioner and our court reporter. So we'll see how far we get in the next half hour before we break. Ms. Carrigan Hill, or Mr. Ferguson, I guess, to present Ms. Carrigan Hill.
Right, we call Ms. Carrigan Hill. Go ahead, Ms. Carrigan Hill. There you go.
Yeah. My name's Kate Carrigan Hill, and I live in Churchill. While I am not a sound specialist, nor an environmental expert, not a professional developer, nor a traffic engineer, I am a 5-year resident of 1441 Beulah Road, which my husband recently described upon learning that Amazon might move in as being in the eye of the beast. I can testify as to what it's like to live on one of the few thoroughfares in Churchill. When we bought this house, we were newly married and the house fit all of our needs. It was the right house after looking at a lot of houses in the Woodland Hills School District, and we have put a lot of time, talent, and treasure in it in the past 5 years. I did not realize at the time how busy Beulah Road can get, as I was unfamiliar with the area. While most of Churchill is tranquil, quiet, and serene, Beulah Road is a main road from Turtle Creek and Penn Hills, which results in a lot of vehicles. The road splits into 2 lanes as it heads up the hill. That is when some cars, SUVs, motorcycles, and delivery trucks break into the passing lane and race up the hill to a stoplight. Traffic sometimes bottlenecks there and then again at the next light. The Westinghouse site is across the street from my house. I can see its buildings through the trees on the hillside, particularly in the fall and winter. It's a pretty sight as the seasons change. When I heard for the first time in late March that there was a plan to build a massive Amazon warehouse on the Westinghouse site, I was appalled. The more I've learned, the more outraged I've become. How anyone of reasonable mind and common sense could think that this is a good idea is beyond me. It was a shock to find out that the Amazon vehicles would be diesel 18-wheelers running all day and night, every single day and night of the year. It was a further shock to find out that there would not be direct access from 376 and a direct exit to 376. I can see a warehouse being built in an industrial park far away from houses, people, kids, and neighborhoods. Under no circumstances can I get on board with tractor trailers on Greensburg Pike, where there are 2 large schools with lots of kids, lots of homes. The same is true of the homes on Graham, William Penn Highway, and Beulah. This is essentially a massive trucking operation, and the sheer danger and the endless traffic will be insurmountable. When the North for Sale's last mile site is built, I fully expect to see many 18-wheelers barreling down Beulah, as it will be the quickest way to get there. I've learned how Amazon employees are treated if they're late, not fulfilling their quotas, or miss their scheduled pickup and delivery times. What is to stop them from using Beulah Road as the quickest route? What's to stop them from stacking up on Greensburg Pike in front of the schools and houses if they're too early to enter the site? I've been told that Amazon trucks won't pull over and idle, but 2 weeks ago, I took a picture of an 18-wheeler pulled over, engine running on Beulah. It's a little kept secret that this queuing up, engines running, emitting diesel pollution, idling is happening all over the country. What is different with this one is that it will happen in an actual neighborhood. I have made no mention yet of the possible 1,000+ employees' car. That only adds to the truck congestion. What will the additional real cost to the borough be when our roads are damaged, when accidents happen, when kids are hit walking to and from school? The site from my front door is of an unmanicured hillside held in place with a continuous line of Jersey barriers. They're there because of 2 previous landslides. Also in eyesight is a continuous line of 60 to 70-year-old green trees. I see the seasons change on that hill. We did not purchase a house to see an industrial-sized retaining walls and hundreds of trees torn down. We did not anticipate that the site would be leveled. When Mother Nature is messed with, someone pays the price. I have seen what happens when there's a powerful storm. The water rushes down Beulah and down the Westinghouse hillside, forming a waterfall. As there are known abandoned mines underneath the hills, I anticipate that after punishing storms, the now mostly treeless land will give way and end up in our front yard. I say this because of the massive landslides in Kilbuck Township on Route 65 in 2006, when developers insisted on bulldozing a hillside over the residents' objections. The land gave way, Route 65 was covered with mud and rocks, and Walmart walked away. Given a fairly recent diagnosis of cough asthma, I expect nothing beneficial from the loss of 1,400 trees, which filter particulates and clean up the air. I expect nothing beneficial from nonstop diesel emissions, which are known to cause asthma, lung problems, and cancer. I expect nothing beneficial from the destruction of acres and acres of green space and the construction of an almost 3 million square foot mega warehouse and surrounding impervious surface, which will create a heat island. I expect nothing beneficial in terms of property values increasing. I may not have known what living on Beulah Road would be like 5 years ago, but I am certain that I would not have missed a massive warehouse across the street, 18-wheelers every few minutes, an industrial-sized retaining wall, an unrelenting diesel smell, and loud, never-ending, obnoxious truck noise. I would not have even considered looking at our house 5 years ago, certainly at no house on Beulah, and probably would have negated all houses in Churchill. I do expect something beneficial from our Churchill Council. I expect that benefit to be that they will listen to their constituents, those same constituents who are opposed to this 10 to 1. Those same constituents who signed a petition which has 1,651 signatures. Those same constituents who formed Churchill Future, informed our residents, organized protests, created committees, alerted the media, planted opposition signs, sent emails and letters to council, contacted environmental and political allies, and made a point of notifying our senior residents who have largely been shut out of any of this process. Those same constituents who want progress and jobs and developments of the site that benefits Churchill in every way and not just financially. I expect that council will follow the ordinance which speaks to the health, welfare, and safety of its residents. I expect that council will do right by their own neighbors as the majority of us are opposed. I say that confidently as there has been no pro-Amazon group formed by residents in response to Churchill Future. Diane, Norma, Valerie, Adam, Kevin, Matt, and Jay, it is not an exaggeration to say that you hold our lives, our kids' lives, our health, our safety, our welfare, our way of life, and Churchill's actual future in your hands. Please stand with us. Please stand with our senior residents who don't want this and feel powerless to stop it. Please stand with our families with children who are terrified by this. Our longtime residents who never planned to move again, our newer residents who moved here recently because of the life that Churchill currently offers, and with those who will someday want to move to Churchill. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Metz, Mr. Gallagher, do you have any cross-examination for Ms. Carrigan Hill?
No questions.
Okay. Any members of council, and while we're asking members of council, if any other party objectors have questions for Ms. Carrigan Hill, please notify Alex by raising your virtual hand. Council members, any questions? Alex, I need your insight for those in the chambers. I'm guessing the answer is no, but can't quite see any head shaking.
That is correct. There's no questions coming from this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any party objectors notifying you of interest in asking questions? Okay. Ms. Carrigan Hill, I think that's all for you tonight. Thank you very much. All right, I believe we have one more objector who is going to testify, and Mr. Ferguson, I believe that's Ms. Phillips.
Right.
Alex, you're able to locate that phone number and unmute Ms. Phillips?
So at this point, I see two phone numbers. One was Mr. Moore. I apologize for that. The other one, it just says call-in user _1. So I don't know the person's phone number, and I've permitted them to speak. And if you get that permission, please accept it and identify yourself. And if it is Nicole, she'll be permitted to speak.
I see the phone number, which ends in 1673. I think that's Nicole's phone number.
That was a person I did permit them.
Yeah, I think that was Mr. Moore.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay.
And I'm willing to, if she is with him, I'm willing to unmute that and let.
Let me go back. Let me just check that number that I have for her.
Looks like 8597 is the last four for Ms. Phillips.
Great. I'm going to try to just quickly call her if we don't see that number on there. Okay, I called her number, and first of all, it's not busy, which suggests she's not calling in on that number, and I didn't get an answer. So perhaps we could have Mr. Balkey go ahead, and I'll continue to try to reach her in the interim.
Let me ask Alex and maybe get some input from council members there. Is now a good time for us to break? Number one, it gives us a chance to maybe potentially locate Ms. Phillips. And then, then we can sort of roll into the last hour there, right around 10 o'clock, maybe about
Yes.
5 till.
Hold on.
We
Hold
would,
on, Mr.
we would like a break in the room here.
Yeah,
Please.
we're ready for a break.
Let's wait till we hear from Mr. Ferguson about whether or not his witnesses been located. I think it is expected to be a short presentation.
Okay, she's ready to go. Would you like to do that before or after the break?
If you have her now, and if council with leave of council, can we go ahead and let Ms. Phillips go?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so she'll need to dial in though.
Right.
Okay. Nicole, do you have the number to dial in? Yes. Okay, I'll give it to you.
I can provide it if you like.
Yes, please, Alex.
Please call area code 1-929-205-6099. That's 1-929-205-6099.
Okay, do you have
Meeting ID number is 967-2848-6683. I'll repeat that. Meeting ID 967-2848-6683. The passcode is 924938. Again, the passcode is 924938. These are also on the Borough website in a couple locations, and I can certainly email or text anybody who needs these numbers and codes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Can you go on the website and just pick it up? We have 105 people hearing you get this phone number. So can you go on the website and just pick it up and then call in? Yeah. Okay. And all right, thank you. We'll wait for you for a minute. And then if you don't jump on, then maybe we'll just do a break and hope you come in after the break. All right, thank you. I would suggest that we break and give her some time to get the information.
I think that's a good idea.
We're in a de facto break anyway, so.
Why don't we cut out here? We'll see everyone at 10 o'clock, and we'll hopefully have Ms. Phillips on the phone at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, are we all loaded up there in council chambers?
Yes.
Great. Jeannie, you about ready to put us back on the record? She might have got a better offer during the break. Jeannie, you're muted if you were trying to tell us you're ready to go. We'll hold on just another couple minutes until she's ready. You all ready, Jeannie?
I am.
Great, great. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all. All right, we are going back on the record. And Mr. Ferguson, I believe you have a witness to present.
Right. Ms. Nicole Phillips, and she's unmuted, and I think you're ready to go.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I'm Nicole Phillips. I live on Greensburg Pike, 2419, which is 5 houses from the Churchill getting off the Parkway onto Greensburg Pike. And then 4 houses from where the trucks will be turning in to the facility. This is a great impact on me. I did not buy a house in a residential area for it to turn into an industrial area. This is very upsetting. The noise that the impact will have. I sit on my front and my back porch. My grandkids play in the backyard all the time. The pollution, the noise, the air, it's just, I'm not happy. We walk up and down the pike. People stroll their dogs, their kids walk their dogs. It's a lot of traffic that will not be able to happen due to all these trucks coming all day long. I mean, does anybody care that we bought houses to live in a residential area, not an industrial area with pollution, noise? It's just not right. They talk about making the street wider. So does that mean we won't have a sidewalk? When I want to get into my driveway and out of my driveway with all traffic, am I supposed to wait in line to get to my house? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions that I would like the answers to. Not that I think that it's going to matter, because I already know what's going to happen. And I'm not happy about it because I didn't buy a house for this. So can anybody answer any questions about what's going to happen? Is the street going to be widened? Is the sidewalk going to be taken? Nothing.
Phillips, sir, this
We
is,
don't.
Ms. Phillips, we're not answering questions.
Oh, okay.
This is
So,
your testimony.
okay, well, that's my testimony. Pollution. I sit on my porch. I have cookouts. My grandkids play in the yard, in the back and the front. I'm dead smack in the middle of all this. Traffic in the front. I can see the whole warehouse from my back porch. I can see everything, especially when the trees are gone in the fall. So there is no out for me. I'll have traffic, I'll have noise, I'll have pollution. I can see everything. I mean, I'm just not happy. I can't say enough that I purchased a house, waited till my kids got out of college to purchase a house in a residential area for it to turn into an industrial area. That's my testimony.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions for Ms. Phillips.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Hold on just one second. Let's make sure that there's no cross-examination questions for you. If there are any party objectors with questions for Ms. Phillips, please indicate by raising your virtual hand. In the meantime, we'll ask Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Metz first.
No questions.
Okay. Any council members with questions for Ms. Phillips? Starting in the room. No. Anyone online? Does not look like it.
Oh, we do have,
Uh,
Gavin, a couple of the party objectors. Sandra Fox and Ruthie Ray have both asked if they could ask questions of the witness.
Sure. Whoever, you unmute whoever was first, and we'll allow them to examine Ms. Phillips.
So Sandra, if you want to go ahead and speak.
Okay, Nicole, this is Sandy. I wanted to ask you about the impact this development, if it occurs, would have on your ability to park. You mentioned pulling in and out of your driveway would be difficult. What about parking in front of the house?
Right. When I have company, you're allowed to park in front of my house until 3 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, you're allowed to park in front of my house anytime. So that means that I won't have anywhere for anybody to come to my house to park. No company will have anywhere to park if they come to my house.
So how much of a problem will that be for you?
That's a big problem because, like I said, I have 3 children that do not live with me. They come visit, my grandkids come visit. I have people at my house all the time because I live by myself and I had a stroke. So a lot of people do come visit me to make sure that I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be nowhere for anybody to park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Alex, you said Ms. Ray also has questions?
That is correct.
Go ahead, Ms. Ray.
Good evening, Ms. Phillips. I just had a question about similar to Ms. Fox's question, but just was interested in how your quality of life will be impacted if a mega warehouse would be, if this proposal moves forward, specifically as it relates to impacting your health, well-being, and safety.
Well, definitely my well-being. I sit on my back porch every morning just to get fresh air because, like I said, I had a stroke, so I have a brain injury. The fresh air is very good for me. I sit outside, I drink coffee, I just sit out there and look at my yard, look at the trees, the noise itself, all that noise, and those trucks coming past my house. If a big truck goes past my house does rattle. So you're talking about trucks coming down my street all day long from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. My house will shake. The pollution itself will pollute my air that I breathe in because I have a brain injury. I need fresh air. So I won't be getting that because of the pollution.
Ms. Ray,
Thank you.
any other questions?
That's
Ms. Ray, I think you're muted.
no, there aren't any further questions. Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ray. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. I think with that, Mr. Ferguson, do you have any additional witnesses with your group?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that concludes the objector testimony. So big milestone in the saga here. And with that said, we have little under an hour. Hopefully we can get Mr. Balkey's tree committee report. Mr. Balkey, are you, unless Mr. Graziani, am I missing something? Do we have Mr. Balkey teed up?
He's ready.
Great. Mr. Balkey, welcome.
Yes. Okay, I have one thing I would appreciate, Mr. Rob, if you would explain the difference of what just ended and now with my testimony, what are we starting? What's the difference between just what ended plus what I'm doing? It'll help for me and probably will help the other attendees.
Sure, happy to do so, Mr. Balkey, or at least attempt to do so. So, what we just concluded was the objector's cases in chief. And now we are moving on to essentially the Borough Tree Committee, which conducted its own review related to the I guess primarily the tree survey and proposed tree mitigation plan that's been presented by the developer. And again, we understand that you're speaking on behalf of the tree committee as the tree committee chairman. But when it comes to essentially the impact, council will review the testimony and evidence that the tree committee provides and give it weigh its credibility and its impact and its relevance, just the same as they are the other witnesses who have presented evidence and testimony. So while it is sort of a transition to a new phase of the hearing, I would say that, for all intents and purposes, the evidence and testimony presented by your committee, by you on behalf of the committee, could be considered by council in making its ultimate determination regarding compliance by the applicant.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you making that distinction. Thank you, Alex. Alex, let me share the screen. Hopefully everybody attending. I have a 17-slide presentation that hopefully provides facts and figures dealing with the tree impact of the proposed development on the former Westinghouse R&D site. I end up, as you can see, first of all, I'm a resident here for over 40 some years. Ruth Ann and I live on Hampstead Drive. You'll see a picture of it shortly. And I've had the honor and privilege of chairing the tree committee for the last 2 years. And it was a year before we did in putting it together, and I'll provide that information. My own background is, and I will have a slide who the other committee members are. As my own background, I'm a professional engineer. I'm still active, even though I worked for Westinghouse for 42 years. I actually worked at the site in front of you twice during that period. And I have both my bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from the University of Pittsburgh. And in addition to my Westinghouse responsibilities, I was sponsored by the company to also serve in leadership roles in the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or better known as ASME. And I was involved in standards development for many years and ended up serving as the senior vice president for ASME for all standards, for not just for nuclear power, where it was associated with my job, but also other industries as well. And I still serve as a volunteer with the society in standards work, as well as some philanthropic efforts. And then finally, I've been teaching since 2010. I'm an adjunct faculty member at the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm currently delivering a graduate course dealing with safety standards this semester. In fact, we have class tomorrow evening. And I'm going to rely on that background, working with my fellow tree committee members and many others for the information that's provided. This presentation is on the Borough website. It is identified as Exhibit 1 with the Churchill Tree Committee. It was posted there the first day. I didn't know when I was going to speak, so we were prepared back on July 19th, but I'm delivering it now as of September 13th. So my request to Mr. Robb would be that presentation, and there's one other item I'd like to make sure we have in as exhibits, for this public hearing. So what you see in front of you is actually an aerial photograph of the site that I was able to find. And all the trees that we're going to talk about are actually in this picture. We have the trees, if everybody can see my pointer, we have the trees around the buildings. We have some trees up where a parking lot will go. But the trees I think everybody's really concerned about are on these steep slopes, are the trees along this face here. This is on the side of Greensburg Pike. Pike's gas station is about right where my cursor is on the west side of the site. And then you have all the trees on the east face, which you can see the top of them. And here's Buell Road with the underpass under the parkway. And what all the pictures that are shown are usually top views. And this is one that sort of shows a 3-dimension of the site. So this new center is going to be placed across the top of this, I guess, flattened out and dirt pushed on. These trees are lost here. All the trees are lost over here. In fact, the loss comes down over into here. These are the 2 Westinghouse labs that have employees working today, and they will continue to operate. They're on a separate property from the other site. And there is to be a road that'll come up through these trees, wrap around it. And so these trees get lost with a road to come in. Because right now you can see currently this is where the employees park today to use those 2 labs. So, but they will lose that with the way the applicant his proposed design almost makes Westinghouse have no choice but to have to build a road through all these trees just for, you know, a few dozen employees. So next slide, please. Or yeah, I'm running the slides. The presentation, there's 3 pieces. The first part, there have been 2 tree surveys, one done by a very preliminary one by our tree committee, and then Hillwood did hire an arborist to come in and, you know, do a more formal survey, and we need to talk about that. And then based on the removal of the trees, there's 4 impacts that are, I think, should be of great interest to everyone: the stormwater runoff, health and environmental impacts, the economic impact from taking out those trees. And then I want to discuss where our tree committee would like to discuss the new trees that are proposed in relation to the ones being removed. And then finally, the third piece is we have a recommendation for Borough Council to consider. The presentation is based on a paper that you see here. Our tree committee put a 9-page paper together after the arborist did their report, and I'll be talking about that. Our committee put together a 9-page report responding to that, and that is also on the Borough website. The question I have for Mr. Robb is, while the presentation is an exhibit, I believe we would like to have our tree report also, because the tree report puts the text around all the information I'm presenting here this evening. So
Mr. Balkey, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Balkey, but I think your tree report, I believe, was already submitted as an objector's exhibit previously. So it is a record, but if you want it to be part of the tree committee's exhibit packet, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, the way it's signed on the website, it doesn't show, it wasn't submitted. It was submitted independently as a tree. It was submitted a few days before we submitted the presentation. So I don't believe it was filed under Objector. And I would like to clarify that our work here is independent of everyone here in the borough. It's just our committee working with some other experts coming up. I mean, we've listened, obviously, we support everybody in the borough, no matter what their opinion is on any tree efforts. And I'd like to hope everyone views this as an independent review of the subject. And the information I'm going to present here has not been discussed anywhere today. I've listened, I've been here, this is my 9th hearing, and now I've listened to everything. Nobody has discussed what we're going to present here tonight. And the other,
All right, Mr. Balkey, that's fine. Just make sure whatever you want submitted as part of your tree committee exhibits makes it over to Mr. Gaziani, and we'll make sure that it gets marked and put on the website.
Oh, okay. Because I have references in our report has 10 references that provide research information to support statements that I have here. And I try to identify them here in the presentation. The other thing I wanted to note, when we put this together, we have 3 audiences in mind. Our first audience is Borough Council. We've been advising the council now for 3 years on this topic, both as an ad hoc group and as a tree committee. And we've worked real hard here to provide factual information that will help the Borough Council in their decision on what they want to do with the proposal in front of them. The second one is the applicant itself. We believe there's some other information may be beneficial to them to give them a better feel for what Churchill's about. And I'll be making reference to items here that tie to the effort they're doing. And then the third are clearly all the residents who are tied in and others interested parties here this evening.
Mr. Robb, I want to place an objection to this entire line of testimony in these exhibits. I find them irrelevant. The Borough Tree Committee's jurisdiction is limited to trees in the rights of way, and all this testimony is relevant to the trees on the site.
I understand your objection, Mr. Gallagher. I will say that council has requested this report by the tree committee, so we'll note your objection for the record, and we'll allow Mr. Balkey to move on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, the tree committee contributors, the reason what drew the tree committee together was the aspect of people have been cutting trees down in the borough, and there have been impacts as a result of that. And some of us learned that other boroughs have tree ordinances of varying degrees. So we brought that to the attention of Borough Council in the spring of 2018. The Borough Council then formed an ad hoc committee to have representatives from all four voting districts that make up the borough. And we worked as a team for a year to develop our ordinance. And I'd like to say the ordinance is expand way beyond just the public rights of way. You'll see in my presentation, we have concern, the ordinance was put together to enhance and maintain the trees across the entire borough, not just along the streets. And so after we submitted our work, the other members that joined me are Dr. Barry Kisloff, a retired medical doctor. Barry actually did all the investigative work, interfacing with other boroughs to look at their ordinances to determine what would apply for Churchill. And then Judy Diorio lives in Blackridge and is chair of the Blackridge Garden Club. And Judy is a has horticultural background, and she's interfaced heavily with the tree commissions of Penn Hills and Wilkinsburg, and has played an instrumental role in the Churchill Valley development as well too. And as advisors, Dr. Joan Gottlieb, who was the head of the Environmental Council, helped us before she moved out of state. And then of course the mayors worked with us. Mayor Paul Gamrat has been with us since day one, as well as council members Diane Law, Norma Greco, and Adam McDowell gave significant time to help in the formation of the ordinance. The other one to mention is that in terms of getting arborist support, we have 3 arborists who have been helping us. Jason Ryan from Bartlett Tree Experts has actually spoken as our educational efforts. Judy Diorio has organized a few educational efforts already, and Jason was there to advise residents on tree diseases as well as tree pruning. And the other one is Jake Malofsky from Tree Pittsburgh. Our tree committee is also working with the Woodland Hills School District. There's a Woodland Hills climate action effort, and we're part of that effort on their committee, trying to look at not just planting trees in Churchill, but planting trees throughout all 12 communities that make up the school district. And Jake Malofsky has been the expert. He's come to our public spaces. He's already walked the Churchill Valley grounds with Mayor Gamrat and myself. In fact, it was almost a year ago to the day. And then the third one is Vince Catrone from Penn State Extension. Vince has been coordinating meetings of tree commissions across the Commonwealth. I've participated in 3 to date. And the information I'm gaining on the stormwater actually comes from that work. Okay, so this is the site. We were given access back in January. Got a call one afternoon from Mr. Graziani, and he said we had some time to go up on the site. And so Dr. Kisloff was available and joined me, and we toured the site. This picture is taken from my phone app that I use to record other things that I do with my running and biking. And you can see the path in the red of how we toured the site to look and try to get an estimate of the trees. And from our work, we were able to exactly count how many trees are on the buildings and how many trees were up in the parking area. And we if we had the exact number, we put it, so you can see we had 75 trees around the buildings, 25 trees around the parking lot. Where it got a bit difficult for us was trying to estimate the hillsides for two reasons. One, we're taking an estimate of how this building would lay across this site and also its roadways and parking spaces, and both on the east side and on the west side, and how many trees this driveway will do coming off of Beulah Road. But I was able to get down into the trees, and in one stand here, I was able to count 50 trees within one area. Then I went across over Old Beulah. I didn't have my phone. I went over and was able to estimate how many equivalent stands existed across this face. And it works out from where the top of this is on Beulah Road to the bottom is 6 football fields. It's about 600 yards. So think of 6 football fields end to end full of trees that are on this east face that are going to be impacted. On the west side, so we estimated that on the impact of the building on the east side would be anywhere from 300 to 500. And then the driveway that would come up would impact 200 to 300 trees. Where we couldn't get a good estimate was on the west side, because we didn't have a real good understanding of how the building and roadways would go at that time. And in fact, when we did the review, the original building actually came out over to here where the yellow space is. And that's when the building was like 850,000 square feet. But when we completed our work, the building was in, or the next session from the applicant was that, well, they were going to reduce the building, but they ended up putting loading docks on this side and parking. So even though the building got reduced, the impact on this east face pretty much has remained the same in terms of the loss of tree impact. So we issued a report on January 13th. It's a reference in our report. It's not on the, I could not find it on the Borough document, but that's okay. It's been superseded by our later report. So then a few months later in April, Hillwood Development brought in Mr. Walter Jarash, an ISA, International Society of Arborists, certified arborist. And he worked with 2 other representatives from Langdon in terms of reviewing. They had 3 days where they went through and counted all the trees. The applicant was able to tell them exactly which areas would be impacted with it. And so when we put our report out, everybody grabbed onto the 1,000 number. It actually made me nervous because I was worried that we were overestimating how many trees were impacted. But then Mr. Jarash came through with his team and they counted all the trees. Now the trees are counting are 12-inch in diameter or larger. So trees that are smaller are not counted. There's smaller trees among this, but the big mature trees are 1 foot and above her. And they counted 1,432 trees. And then he has them all cataloged in terms of the type. And then he has them determined as they're in good shape, fair shape, poor shape, or dead. And a good tree, of course, all the leaves, everything is fine. A fair tree means that there's some dead limbs that might need to be removed, but for the most part, the tree's still healthy. A tree that's poor is only going to survive maybe another 10 years, less than 10 years, it'll be gone. And then there were 78 dead trees, some of them standing and some already with broken trunks throughout the area. So, but that's the report that was given out, and it's actually, well, our tree committee appreciates the cataloging it was done for this effort. But where we did have challenge was the following. In the report, it said of the 514 trees in good condition, 29 are invasive, and then the 195 are disease prone. And then they took our ordinance that said that from 286-6A, that in our ordinance that no invasive, destructive, or diseased tree species shall be permitted in the public right-of-way, and then use it as a baseline to say, well, then the borough would consider, we're identifying what we consider being a desirable tree. So therefore, the existing invasive and disease-prone trees are not desirable and wanted in the borough. So out of those 1,400, there's only 290 that really are healthy, and that's all we're really impacting. And then Hillwood, that's in the report. And then Hillwood, in their presentation on June 2nd, said that they're only removing 290 good trees, and somehow the other 1,064 large mature trees somehow don't matter. They're not wanted in the borough. Well, our tree committee takes great exception to those statements, both by the arborist and also by Hillwood in the statements that they made. To take the aspect in our ordinance, yes, we have along the streets. We absolutely do not want to have any trees that are dead or they have dangerous limbs. In fact, at tonight's Borough Council meeting, we're dealing with 3 properties that have been notified and have trees that have to be addressed. But once you get away from the streets, if I apply the logic, our borough ordinance does apply to our Bullock Pence Park, for example. Therefore, if we applied that logic, then we should be asking for money to cut down Bullock Pence, because it has, in fact, we have 24 hemlock trees that we're treating for hemlock woolly adelgid at this point. So the logic of taking what we had along the streets and saying, well, that's our thoughts across all the others, is our whole tree committee completely disagrees with that. We wrote the ordinance, so we know what our intent was. And the borough council members were in there. You can make up your own mind, but we believe that's really a very incorrect interpretation of our work. So the heavily wooded areas in the R&D buildings are not in the definition, but to extrapolate it that way is incorrect. What you really need to look at is our paragraph 286.5B1. It indicates the goal of our tree committee is to maintain and enhance the population of the entire borough. And I'm going to show you information relative to that. The other feeling of this is that while it appears that you would want 90 to 95% of the trees to be in good or fair condition, and that with the count that was done, there's about 60% are in good or fair categories, doesn't make it acceptable to just go ahead and remove them all. In fact, in our research, we found a Wildlife News article that says that people are trapped by an outdated cultural idea that healthy forest is all but green trees. Actually, an ecologically healthy forest has dead trees, broken tops, down logs. Such forest may not look tidy from the perception of a forester, but a forest with some dead trees is a biologically diverse and healthy from a forest ecosystem. And so that's the way it is over in Bullock Pence, and it's been amazing ever since this came up. My wife and I, we visited, for instance, Laurel Hill State Park. We saw dead evergreen trees, and we don't see the park coming in and cutting those out. In fact, if you go to the Churchill Greenaway with the Allegheny Land Trust, you'll see some trees that are in trouble. And when we went down with the arborist, he said, just let everything be. Nature will take care of itself. And it is. It's a gorgeous site. In fact, right now is the time to go with the goldenrod in full color. So let's now move over to these impacts. So from stormwater, it's been brought up by several people. We've had serious issues in the Pittsburgh area where lives have been lost, much property damage. When we get heavy downpours, that we have heavy downpours that end up with people losing their lives. In fact, I was looking today about a downpour over in the Fox Chapel area where the water rushed down along Little Pine Creek and it killed 8 people because it came as a wave. And when this project was first brought up, and it was a public session, I mentioned my own experience. I was working at the R&D Center when Hurricane Ivan hit, and it hit September 17th of 2004. I'll never forget the day because I came home for lunch, and when I went back up Buell Road, I said, I should not be on this road. The water was so high, and just like one of the other residents just spoke, I counted at least 8 to 10 waterfalls that were pouring off that hillside down onto Buell Road. And I since have talked to someone who is lower on Buell Road, who owns a business down below, and it worked out cars were being carried away. It was lucky nobody drowned that day. So this is a real serious area. And if you remember my photo from the first slide, this is the top of the watershed. This is where it starts. So taking these trees out is actually the last thing you want to do. The trees on the hillsides are the last thing you want to be doing. So the removal of those 1,400 trees is only going to exacerbate a very precarious situation that already exists. The other one is you're increasing the impervious surface from 32 acres to 57 acres that adds stormwater. And I know the other tanks have been added in, but they're not addressing the water, the additional water from removing of the trees on those steep hillsides. Now, from my Penn State extension work, in fact, I got professional development hours from participating because stormwater is a combination of engineering with the arborist to really understand the impact of trees on watershed. And that's where Vince Catrone, he's an authority in the topic. And I'm using information from his case. But people don't realize that on a new tree doesn't absorb very much. And a tree, a large tree such as those on those hillside that are 50 years plus, they'll absorb up to 2,000 gallons a year of water. And as they get older, they don't stop. It just continues to climb. The trees keep expanding in size. So those mature trees are so valuable in terms of their ability to absorb water on a daily basis, and more particularly during a storm. And during the Penn State work, those 50-year trees hold 2,000 gallons of water, but evergreens, and there's more than 111 of them according to Mr. Jarash's work, they absorb 4,000 gallons of water because their needles are on 12 months out of the year. In storms, these mature trees will absorb up to 100 gallons of water. So if we take the 800 trees that are considered to be good or fair, and I count for I just make it 100 of spruce trees that can absorb more water. These trees absorb about 1.8 million gallons of water each year. And the stormwater retention is, they'll hold about 80,000 gallons during a storm, with 60,000 of that being retained over Buell Road. Now, when I look at the new stormwater features, the ones on top, the tanks will not help this at all because the trees are on the hillside. There's one pond just above Fenwick Drive on the lower side that can maybe catch some of the trees off the stormwater on the west side, but there are no features to help address the stormwater off the Buell Road side. So the resident who spoke this evening about Buell Road and seeing the water come off, there's nothing taking those trees off and putting walls up. That water is going to come down much harder than what it does now. And I'm telling you, on the aspect of Hurricane Ivan, we came close to people getting killed with that incident. In fact, one woman pulled off a road before she drowned. I got that from a witness. Okay, next slide. Let me see. Somehow I'm frozen up here. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's some stormwater calculations that have been done. Okay, if I go to the stormwater calculations that were done for the project, there's a input in terms of Ms. Davis used this chart in her presentations. And in my report, we cite the exact page in the Hillwood submittal where this is called out. And I actually did work today where I found the tool that she used from the, because she had the reference here of this NOAA, which is a national weather service here. I was able to find the chart that had the details on how this was developed. So this chart is giving the rainfall density over a 24-hour period that's supposed to go every year, 2 year, 5 year, out to the 100 year. As an engineer, what deeply concerns me is I go back into the Hurricane Ivan, which occurred just 17 years ago, and there was almost 6 inches of rain that fell that day. So you have an event that's already occurred and it's not accounted for. This is saying your highest you can use is 4.97. It works out to 5.95 according to the data sheet I was able to pull off. That's the source for this, is that would be considered a 500-year flood. Another challenge is at the 25-year, it says there's a 4-inch rainfall intensity over 24 hours. But on June 17th of 2009, we got 4 inches in 1 hour in Churchill. So the other thing that I've had this from our tree committee work, our educational effort, the National Weather Service is showing the impact of climate change. The number of thunderstorms that we get per decade has climbed significantly over the last 50 years. And you can see that we're up to where we're getting over the number of heavy storms per decade is in the hundreds, where before it would be in the tens. And what's gone up with it, this is other data in this presentation. This is data I since got out for the presentation. Over 180 years of records, the 3 wettest years are 2018, 2019, 2004. And if you go to the daily precipitation records, that out of the top 8, 5 of them have occurred here in the last 15 to 20 years. In fact, I just saw today that Hurricane Ida dropped 3.3 inches, and that's for 2021. So if I come up here and look at the 5-year and 10-year numbers, the 5-year says use 2.9. I'm sorry, the 10-year says use 3.34, and 25 use 3.95. It's saying that every 25 years you'll see this event. If you look at these numbers, almost every year we're getting what you're saying will occur in 10 to 25 years is occurring every year. So this chart, I know the challenge is the input being provided by the government who's providing this chart. It is not reflecting today's weather. And in fact, I happened to read an article from that everyone's aware of the very serious flooding in Tennessee that occurred at the end of August. They got 17 inches of rain in one day. Incredible. And who's being faulted is the Federal Emergency Management Agency is being heavily criticized for not updating their floodplain calculations and floodplain charts. They have let homes be built in areas that now with today's weather, they shouldn't be there. The risk is 10 times higher than what the FEMA calculation shows. There's pressure coming back on these agencies to get the data reflecting to what's happening. And that's a concern here. I've shared what it looks like during a storm, how serious Buell Road, all the ways down to Turtle Creek, all those people at risk when you get these heavy storms. Taking the trees off the steep hillsides is the last thing you should be doing. Okay, let's go to human health. Okay, in terms of some connection, there was a study done by the Department of Agriculture, and more work's being done in this area. And it's a study trying to relate tree loss to public health. And the study they have is when the Emerald Ash Borer came across 15 states, including Pennsylvania. And here's a picture of a street in Toledo, Ohio, where you can see this beautiful tree-lined street. And then you have the street with the trees all gone. After in 3 years it did it, they estimated that there were 15,000 deaths due to cardiovascular disease and an additional 6,000 for lower respiratory illness. So there's a human mortality when you take out trees, a significant amount of trees. And what it is, people that might have underlying health issues, you take their trees away, the air pollution affects them far greater. That's what this article has outlined. It goes through what contributed to that. It's not like there's a one-to-one correlation. They said the best example is if you go back 60, 70 years ago and everybody smoked, the aspect of smoke, the lung cancer, it took a long time to get that association. And they're saying now that the aspect of tree loss has a very detrimental effect on our public health. And the other one I found was there was a study done in North Carolina in 2015. It brought some of the latest data in terms of health effects from tree removal. And they're estimating that each year that there are about 850 lives are saved by the trees across the country. And in urban areas with high levels of green, the people are more likely to be physically active and less overweight and obese. And then a 5-year study of senior citizens found that walks in areas with trees significantly influence longevity in a positive way with higher survival rates. And crime reduction is linked to tree coverage. And I'm going to show some data related to that. The other big one is CO2 absorption. It works out the world's trees absorb about 40% of the CO2. But we're having such tremendous tree loss across the globe, and you're going to see how we contribute to that without this project. And that there's roughly 3.5 to 7 billion trees are lost every year. And Yale University did a study showing that civilization, we've removed almost half the trees off the planet. Now, trees absorb, a large mature tree will absorb about 50 pounds of CO2 in a year. So assuming our 800 trees that are fair or moderate on those hillsides, about 20 tons of CO2 is absorbed each year. You take those trees out, we do not have that. You can put new ones in, but I'll show later that it will not have anywhere near the same impact. So the trees are very beneficial, and with the CO2 absorption, of course, it's also improving our air quality. Okay, this is a tree canopy map of Pittsburgh. It was done for us by Tree Pittsburgh when we were putting our tree ordinance together. And they had aerial coverage of data for our borough in 2010, and then a relook 5 years later. Our borough lost a net loss of 48 acres of trees in just 5 years, okay, without this project. It's incredible. And what it is, residents, what I see happening is residents will cut down their trees. Well, they can't do them along the streets, but they cut them down their private property. Once they do it, then the next door neighbor, they do it. And it's like feeds on itself. And so we're losing our trees already at a very high rate. And we did similar charts. Tree Pittsburgh did similar charts for the entire school district. Woodland Hills School District over that same period lost 235 acres of trees, which would cover 178 football fields. Okay, so in Churchill, we're the biggest contributor to the tree loss in Woodland Hills. So we're trying to promote tree planting with the children. We've had our first tree planting effort at Wilkins Elementary back here in the spring, and more tree planting is expected at the high school. And we've already surveyed all 5 school sites in that. So this tree loss is already occurring without it. So with this project, this whole area here will turn red, and this area over here will turn red. So, and some estimates I have here, the pictures I'm showing, I have pictures of some trees around our area. So in 5 years, we lost 3.5% of our tree canopy. From 2016 to 2021, we've been trying to keep track of large trees being removed, whether they're in the public space or these are all in private space. So we feel our canopies dropped down to some 46 to 47%. Tree Pittsburgh was supposed to do a tree map in 2020, but COVID knocked that out, but they're expecting to be able to do a new tree canopy in 2022. We've had some oak wilt outbreaks over the last decade, and we're currently dealing with hemlock woolly adelgid in a few places, and we're worried about the spotted lanternfly. With this tree loss, there are new stormwater issues that have arisen throughout the borough. In fact, the Borough Council dealt with one here on Old Beulah here during their meeting today. And we actually have an issue on our own property here as a result of increase. We have new tree planting. Pace School, here's the trees along here that were planted a few years ago. And Beulah Presbyterian Church is currently planting. They've planted 400 trees already. They just notified me yesterday that they're going to be planting another couple hundred trees here come in early October. So the 1,400 large tree removal at this R&D site is going to drop our tree canopy down into the low 40% range. It decreases home values and other factors. Okay, so this is data that's from the Pittsburgh Magazine from 2019. And they have 5 categories. They use to rank the municipalities. And under neighborhood, the land area under tree cover is one of the rankings. So right now, as of 2019, out of the 130 communities, they have included like Murraysville is included in the list. And there might be one other from another county as well. But so here's a list. You go up to Kilbuck Township, Fox Chapel, they still have 3/4 of their tree canopies in place. You come down to Forest Hills, Churchill, Braddock Hills, Mount Lebanon, we're sitting at 50%. And then you come down to the other communities that make up our school district, and you start seeing Braddock and Rankin having these real low numbers here. And what is happening is, in fact, Judy Diorio came across an article that we referenced in our report from the New York Times. And the title of the report deals with why is it that the rich are the only ones that have trees? Since when have trees existed only for rich Americans? Because what happens, you look at the data, less trees, higher crime. Less trees, lower life expectancy. If you go and look at the average home values across these, up here you're talking homes that are $750,000 and higher. You come down to lower, it's much less. So you drop our borough from well, I'm saying I think we're at about 47 based on our own estimates. This project will drop us down to 40%. You take those trees out, you'll devalue all those homes along Beulah Road, Old Beulah, Greensburg Pike. And so if you say, well, save some money, we'll get some new tax revenue, but if the value of the person's home drops by tens of thousands of dollars, it's of little value. So this is really quite significant with the data being considered, watching all the various communities of what's happening. Let's talk about new trees. And I'm watching my time here. I'm trying to wrap up by 11 o'clock here. Okay, we really appreciate the applicant wanting to plant 1,000 new trees across the parking lots, the walls. But if you look at a new tree versus here's Mr. Jarash catalog that there's 57 hickory trees, mature hickory trees that are in good condition on those hillsides. You compare this small new tree to that, it's no comparison. The loss is enormous taking these mature trees out. In weight, those mature trees can weigh up to 10 tons. The new one are less than 100 pounds. In terms of water absorption, few gallons. These will absorb 100 gallons in a storm. In CO2, they do very little, where the mature trees are taking much more. And the new trees that are in the parking lots and along the walls and driveways, they'll never equal what these trees that are going to be removed off those hillsides. It'll take 20 or 30 years for those new trees to have any impact that'll come anywhere close to what we have today. So our recommendations is the way this e-commerce center, its current design, should not be approved. It does not meet the intent of our tree ordinance. And some very serious questions are raised here on terms of stormwater. While the calculations are done through the data provided, as an engineer overlooking an event that occurred, it usually gets one in trouble. In fact, in my own mind, I had when the Fukushima event occurred back in 2011, I was on a special team with the former chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We examined what happened there. There were 14 reactors actually impacted by the earthquake. And the difference on Fukushima Daiichi was they did not account for historical markers that showed that they could get tidal waves up to 60 or 70 feet. So that plant was much lower elevation to the ocean. And that's what got them in big trouble. And that's what I'm concerned here is that, sure, your calculations look right, but the engineers, we're to design, we're to solve problems, we're to look at the rare yet credible events. And that stormwater calculation doesn't do that. So the Borough Council, and really when you're looking at, in terms of health and safety, taking all those trees out, and it's going to increase the risk. It's going to exacerbate a risk that already exists, putting people's lives and their property at stake, and the health of people that live, particularly those near there, where they look into a beautiful hillside with trees. Now they're going to look into a wall. It'll have detrimental effects. There's no doubt about it. And then from a climate change standpoint, President Biden, he went to New Jersey. If you look, Hurricane Ida, if Hurricane Ida had come up a little further north, we would have gotten 8 inches in one day. So New Jersey got it. New Jersey got 8 inches of rain, flooded in the daylights. President Biden saying, hey, code red on climate change. The last thing you should be doing is approving a project where you take trees out that remove 20 tons of CO2 each year and then put more pollutants up into the air, into it. It's actually backwards of where we need to go. So, but I know that Borough, I've seen all your meetings. I know the challenges you face with the finances. You're looking to do that site. But if you want to do it, this design has to be really radically changed and scaled down. Other people have talked that this distribution center is, in fact, since the very first presentation, and Hillwood showed 19 sites that they had already constructed, with the largest one being 1.8 million square feet. I have asked 3 or 4 times during different meetings, including the Planning Commission, why are we getting a project 50% larger than anything done before? And the silence is deafening, both from the applicant and our Planning Commission completely let that go. And I think there were others today that brought up the aspect that this massive center is way too large for the area that we have. In terms of the Westinghouse employees, and make them have those few dozen employees take out another 300 or 400 trees to put a driveway in so that they can get up to their lab. It works backwards of what we should be doing from an engineering sustainability standpoint. In fact, if you flip the site, that was brought up, somebody had typed that in one of the meetings. If you flip the site and put the parking over, then you could let the Westinghouse people park at their site while you still, where you do your distribution center. But in the Borough Council, you really need to be thinking through possible future scenarios. One scenario is you approve this project, trees get removed, they run into issues with mine subsidence or something else. This is what happened out there in Kilbuck Township. Something serious goes, you're done. These trees, everything else, traffic, you can change that. The minute you remove these large trees, it's irreversible. You can't put them back. You can't do it in our lifetime. So our tree committee, my fellow tree committee members, I believe are tied in here. They support this recommendation. You should not be approving this project as it is. It flies right against our tree committee work and also from a stormwater concern. And for the applicant, it needs to be completely retooled. If you want to try getting something that tries to work, this is way too big, it's there. And finally, I want to finish with a picture here that has impacted me during my tree work. I came across, this is the oldest tree in Pennsylvania. It's called the Sacred Oak. It's just east of Reading, Pennsylvania. And when I see a tree 500 years old, it makes me feel as though, you know what, as people, we're just passing through. The trees are here. They're the longest living organisms on the planet. You got to treat them with respect. That's the biggest thing I've learned working with all the wonderful people on the tree committee in our borough, trying to preserve the very special place that we have. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Balkey. If you could stop sharing, or whoever's sharing, if you could stop sharing.
That would be me.
All right, thank you. So we are just about out of time. We will make Mr. Balkey available for cross-examination. Mr. Balkey, I did want to just clarify for the record, the opinions that you've given are those of the members of the tree committee, is that correct?
Yeah, the tree committee reviewed the report, and they, before I submitted it, I don't just submit things in. We worked on this together. They provide input. They reviewed it. The three of us, our tree committee, stands with what's in this presentation.
And those three individuals, just to be clear for the record, who are the three individuals who comprise the tree committee?
Barry Kisloff, Judy Diorio, D-I-O-R-I-O. I also want to clarify that what's expressed here does not represent the opinions of my former employer, my engineering society, ASME, and it does not that is not the University of Pittsburgh. These are just on behalf of the tree committee.
And can you also confirm that no borough council members had any role in the preparation of that tree committee report?
No, they did not. No, they did not, provide any input, comment, or they were aware that we were developing it, because once the applicant got a very respected arborist to do the effort, we wanted to make them aware that we were doing this effort. And I think that's why the Borough Council asked for this presentation, because they were aware that we went to great lengths here to do this review.
Yes, and I knew the answer to those questions, Mr. Balkey. I just want to make sure it was clear because it is a bit unusual to have a borough committee, a borough advisory committee provide testimony. But as I responded to Mr. Gallagher's objection, and as you testified, Borough Council in this particular case did specifically request that the tree committee conduct a review of the submission and prepare some sort of presentation as you presented tonight. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. It is 11 o'clock now. I hate to carry you over for cross-examination, but I think it's appropriate. Hopefully you're planning to be there at the next meeting on the 20th.
Yes.
Okay, great. Since we are finishing up, I want to announce for the record, the hearing will be recessed to September 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Same Zoom link that we've been using all along. That will be part 10 of the hearing. The anticipation is that in addition to any cross-examination, if any, of Mr. Balkey, that the borough engineer would similarly present essentially a summary of their findings or whatever they plan to present, based on their role in the review of the submissions here. So unless there are any other housekeeping items from Alex or council with an SEL, let me know. Otherwise, we'll call it a night. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.